true self means, sounds like, and looks like. Welcome to the very first episode of Brave Steps Forward. I'm your host, Karlin E. Tapia, coach, speaker, educator, and certified practitioner. I'll put more info of my work and what I do in the show notes. Feel free to contact us. My team would love to schedule a guest on my podcast. I have exciting plans for this, and I am ready to serve you. This podcast is designed to help you break free from fear or toxic stress and grow into the most confident, empowered version of yourself. If you're feeling stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed, you've come to the right place. Hey there. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing a little bit about you and what you offer to this world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. So where do I start? Well, my name is Paula. I recently graduated from Emerson College with my Master of Science in Communication Disorders. I have this condition called Developmental Language Disorder. It's a neurodevelopmental condition, type of neurodivergence, where comprehending, so like listening and understanding, or reading and understanding, speaking, learning language in general is difficult for people like me. This is a disorder that you're born with. It's often genetic. It's actually a pretty common disorder to have. I believe the statistic is 2 out of a class of 30 students will have DLD. And it very much impacts a person's academics, a person's social life. It affects really so much of a person's everyday life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I struggle with some language struggles. I don't know exactly. I think it's probably like past trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I share a lot of compassion with you and empathy. So please feel free that this is a safe, judgment-free zone. You won't ever experience like me feeling weird about you not saying something properly or whatnot.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I also turned on the captions. Is that something that helps you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Subtitles. I always turn them on when I'm watching TV, when I'm watching a movie. Just getting that extra language input helps me to understand better. But I still sometimes turn over to my friend or whoever's watching with me and be like, what did they just say? I don't understand. Wait, I have to go back.
Yeah. One of my mentors, one of my dear mentors, she has audio processing disorder. And so I'm just around a lot of different people. I mean, I love it because we're all different, but I just want to hear more of you and your story. But I just wanted to create that, like, that foundation for you to feel totally free here.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And feel free to stop me if you hear me ramble at any point. That's also okay with me too.
Okay.
But so DLD is something that, like I said, I've lived with in my entire life. But I wasn't diagnosed until I was 4 years old. So my parents started to notice that I was not speaking. And when I say speaking, I don't mean like articulation. I mean in terms of language. I was not speaking like the rest of my classmates or the rest of my peers, other people my age. I was not even putting 2 words together, like an adjective and a noun, like blue balloon. I couldn't do that. I was still saying 1 word phrases, quote unquote, and pointing at things to get what I needed. And my mom had brought it up to my pediatrician at the time. And she was like, oh, that's always the case with bilingual children, because I'm bilingual. I'm Peruvian American. We speak Spanish and English at home. So, oh, that's just being bilingual. Okay, you're the doctor. I'm going to trust you. So then I went to preschool, and my parents put me in a bilingual preschool, Spanish and English, where really, I don't know why they call it a bilingual preschool, because really only the preschool aide was bilingual. And my parents had dropped me off at preschool, and one day the preschool aide came up to my parents and she was like, hey, so comparing your daughter to other children her age in bilingual homes as well, she's not where she should be language-wise. So that was one thing that happened. At the same time, my parents were attending school at night, studying for their teaching credential. Now, there was one class where they had a speaker come in and talk about learning disabilities. And as my mom was taking notes for my dad, they started to, some of the things that the speaker was saying was starting to kind of resonate with my dad. And they just kind of had this moment where they looked at each other like, oh my God, that's literally you, my dad. And then they were like, oh my God, that's probably Paula too. So those two things together opened my parents' eyes to the fact that this was not a delay, that it was going to go away as I grew up. And the preschool aide had recommended that I get official speech and language testing. So I went to a speech therapist within the school, and they did some testing, and it showed that yes, there was, she could tell just listening to me, even just listening to me, that I was not where I should be, like the preschool aide said. But she didn't have bilingual testing available, so she recommended me to an outside hospital with an SLP who was bilingual and had bilingual assessments. And it was confirmed there, definitely yes. She has moderate to severe, now what we call developmental language disorder.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And do you think it was, like, are you glad that it was detected early on?
Yeah, and I actually, I really should have been tested much sooner. At 4, it's kind of within the speech language pathology world, it's kind of considered late to be diagnosed. Okay. I should have started receiving services pretty much as soon as my parents noticed, around 2 years old. I don't know if the trajectory of speech therapy would have been different if I had gotten services at 2. But for me, from 4 for 5 intensive years until 9, I was with that bilingual speech therapist in the hospital, receiving intensive treatment, kind of like what other children can pick up naturally from listening to their parents speak or listening to their peers. My speech therapist had to teach me as if I was really relying on her.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Can you give me like an example?
Sure. So we had different goals throughout those 5 years. Some of the goals I remember, starting with, like I said, putting 2 words together, then creating longer phrases and creating sentences, and then putting those sentences together to make a coherent narrative, a coherent story. I remember we had these cards. Oh my gosh, these cards. Oh my gosh, I hated them, but I didn't want to show it, but I hated them. So they were cards of like simple steps or simple stories. So for example, the simple step of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So she took out like set of those 4 cards, put them on the table, mixed them all up, and she's like, okay, put the cards in order from beginning to end. And sometimes the cards were a little difficult for me to put together, but eventually I did. And then she'd be like, okay, tell me from the beginning, each card, how does this story or these steps go? And I would kind of get the beginning and I would get the end, but the middle was always difficult for me. So that was something that we really like hammered in my head, both in speech therapy and at home with my mom, because my mom was really, she was kind of like being an SLP herself, a speech language pathologist, at home, because I was only seeing my speech therapist, Stella. I was only seeing her once a week. So Stella and my mom worked together for, okay, what do we do the other 6 days of the week? What should my mom be doing with me? So we did those cards. Other things that we worked on together, I used to say a lot, still do it, but it was, I did it because I really needed that time to put all my free floating thoughts into a coherent sentence that made sense to the other person. And she taught me to just be aware of my speech and give myself pauses to, make those sentences, not say all the time, because then it would be just over and over and over all the time.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. My brain is wired as ADHD brain. Mm-hmm. And so something that I do that I've noticed is that I could be having a conversation and I think so fast that I could like go down loop and think about something really random. And the person who's talking to me is just like, I can see that they're like, where did she just, grab that thought and just started talking about that? But in my head, it makes sense why, like I did the connection in my head and I just forgot to like explain how I got to that point. So I have to be mindful of like sometimes just taking a deep breath and kind of just talk in order or loop them around, like say what I want to say because of my impulse, but then loop back around and say, and I say that because X, Z.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I that idea or that feeling of like, I know what I want to convey. I know what is the point of what I'm saying. And then trying to make that clear to the other person. We both, it seems like we both share that.
Yes.
Which actually DLD has there are a lot of people out there who have coexisting DLD and ADHD, or it's a type of neurodivergence, right? So there is a lot of overlap with other conditions like dyslexia, and there are some symptoms. I hate to pathologize it, but for lack of a better term, because we're finding it's also difficult for people with DLD. There are some symptoms of DLD that is similar to other neurodivergent conditions. So yeah, you can empathize because we have a lot in common, actually.
I love the neurodivergent world. One, because I am one,
Hmm.
and it's more fun to me
Yeah.
to be around people like us.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's more creative.
Yeah. And like I yes, this does a DLD does affect how I socialize, how I wrote papers in grad school, and how I debated in college and all that sort of stuff. Um, but that's on the left side of the brain. The right side of the brain, the creativity, the imagination. You will find that people with DLD have this incredible sense of creativity. They're often musicians, dancers, even poets, songwriters. They artists. They find ways to communicate in that is not language heavy. You know what I mean?
Yes. I use my hands a lot, my facial expression a lot.
Yeah.
And now I know, because for a long time I was masking, and I finally, I think it was, yeah, when I started my first year in grad school, that's
Mhm.
when, because I'm in the mental health field,
Mhm.
all my professors are doctorates, PhDs, and they were like, hey, like, we noticed that you probably would benefit from like extra time. And not that you're not smart, because I'm naturally smart, because
Mhm.
I could not attend class and just read the lecture and I would do fine. But they said, imagine what you can do if you gave yourself what you needed and the support that you needed. So,
Yeah. I needed accommodations starting in ninth grade, although really I should have had accommodations probably starting since elementary school, since I got my diagnosis. It was the the moment where my parents and I realized that I was going to need accommodations, like really need them moving forward, was and I'm just so open about this. It was my first F in a final. I was in the 8th grade, and it was my US history class, and we had to, I don't know how anyone could have completed this in 1 hour, but apparently my peers did. It was multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answer, and an essay. All of that in an hour.
wow.
The DLDer me did not finish the test.
Yeah.
And we were like, this is 8th grade. Starting in 9th grade, we're ramping up the academics, and we're getting more serious about them, because we want to get it. We want me, my parents and I all wanted me to get into college. So how do we prevent this from happening again? So I had to go get re-diagnosed with DLD, because I had the diagnosis when I was 4. It was outdated, quote unquote, even though DLD is a chronic lifelong condition that never changes. But so I got a new SLP to run through days of testing. She still has it. No surprise there. And she listed out, these are accommodations that I think she would really benefit from. So for me, it was double time on tests, quizzes, in class writing assignments, in class essays, things like that. It was a recorder, or a writing live scribe pen, those recording pens,
Yes.
so that I could, if I missed anything auditorily, I could go back home and I could refer back to whatever part I was missing and rewrite those notes. Also, getting the PowerPoint lectures ahead of time, so that I wasn't doing a lot that was language heavy, like listening and taking notes on the board at the same time. that's heavy for me in terms of language. There was also a note taker, a peer note taker was recommended for me. There was just a lot. And I was really grateful that when I was in college, all of those accommodations were accepted. In my high school, didn't accept the double time. They only gave me half time. Better than nothing, but it wasn't great either.
I'm so sorry.
And well, it was a different time back then. It wasn't even that long ago, really, but it feels so long ago now that we have. I mean, I'm just looking back to like, even 5 years ago. There's so much more acceptance and understanding of neurodivergent conditions. And, I say back then, it was still having a disorder or disability was something to be covered up. Yeah. It was something that was kind of shameful. And it was just ignorance. It was ignorance. When I think about that younger version of me and the hurt that she was dealing with, because I experienced severe bullying. I experienced pretty much all the main types of bullying. For example, one example of the type of bullying that I experienced was cyberbullying. And I had been told anonymously that I should take a look around me. Nobody wants to be in the room with me. I had also been told several times to kill myself, to slit my wrists. And that was something that actually until recently, I had not been able to talk about, even when I did my past anti-bullying activism. It was it was what made me struggle my whole life with suicidal thoughts and attempts. I believed that I was taking the spot of someone who actually deserved to be in school, in the school that I was in. And I didn't know what I was doing to make people so upset with my living. But I just wanted people to not be upset with me anymore. And I know that's kind of martyr thinking, but that was my thinking at the time. I just wanted to make people happy, and I was such a people pleaser. I don't know really what the bullying was all about. If it was all, I don't think it was all just because I had DLD. I have big teeth, so I was called bucktooth. My old doctor told me that she thinks some of the bullying had to do with my cystic acne. I don't really know. But a child who cannot express themselves very well will be even more vulnerable to bullying because they don't have the words to stand up for themselves.
Right.
And so this sounds like a totally random story. Why are you telling this, Paula? When I think about that little girl, and I think about how she was bullied and how the DLD made it worse for her, it just, I know that there are kids out there who are, there are children and adolescents out there who are also being bullied for their differences. And that is something that I want to try to heal as much as I can. I am really only one person, but just to share my story and let parents and other children know that your words are impactful and they do last a lifetime. So
yeah,
try to understand rather than ostracize.
Yeah, no, I thank you for taking the time to do that, because you could very well decide just to, just live your own life without wanting to contribute to society.
Mhm.
And you're not alone.
I'm so glad that now nothing is 100%, right? There's still so much that we can do as a society to better integrate, accept, and welcome the disabled community. But we've come so far, and I really love to see that.
Yeah, yeah. Also, what do you plan on doing with your degree? I'm interested in knowing, what are your future plans?
Yeah. I am right now studying for the praxis, which is the licensing exam. I hope to do my clinical fellowship, which is 9 months of working as a clinician. I really like working with children with language disorders, not just DLD. I like to work with people who have difficulties with fluency, so stuttering. And then eventually I want to go for my PhD. Is one thing that my bilingual SLP told me later. She said she didn't want to tell us, but the research had shown that children with DLD don't have the best outcomes. And what I mean by that is they're more likely to be under or unemployed for at least a year. They're at higher risk of not going to college. And if they do go to college, they'll usually go for a major that's not communication heavy, not writing heavy or speaking heavy. So maybe something like art. Then even fewer of them go to grad school, and even fewer of them go get their PhD. And so I want to go in and change that statistic, even if it's just one person. I see that there is such a need for DLD research. There's just not a lot out there. It's an invisible, hidden disorder. There are no physical features on us that show that this person has DLD. They're not usually, children with DLD, especially girls, are not usually showing behaviors that are disruptive to the classroom. They're like me, like I was when I was a child, typically quiet, more introverted, more shut off, kind of like if I hide, no one's gonna call on me. And so all that to say that they're the ones that slip through the cracks, and they're underdiagnosed, and there's not, because of that, there's not a focus for them in the speech language pathology research world. But if 2 children out of a classroom of 30 have DLD, that's a pretty large percentage. I have so many questions about DLD in children and adults, and I want to answer those questions. And I think with a PhD, I can meet mentors, I can meet other people who are in the research world, and yeah, just start asking and answering those questions myself.
Yeah, no, I support you 100%. I myself want a PhD because of similar reasons. I have a long story, and that's an episode for some other time, but and especially as a minority, I think you would be amazing.
But yeah, I've been first I was an anti-bullying, social justice and political activist. And then, gosh, was it really starting in 2019, I think? That's when I focused more on linguistic activism, the spreading the awareness of DLD, and being a disability justice advocate. But I've been involved with the political sphere as much as possible while being a full-time student.
Right.
I've taken my speaking engagements because despite having DLD, I've somehow and being nervous with talking with other people, I still found a way to become this, I guess, kind of motivational speaker, a public speaker for DLD and anti-bullying. And I've shared my story and the research that I've done with in many settings, and including government forums. So, but I'm always open to working with other people and other organizations. And I do think that the people in federal government who are in charge of our legislation and bills should be doing more for my community. And I'm open to anyone talking with me and helping me out with that dream.
Yeah, I agree. With your social media, do you produce any content?
So I have an activist Instagram account. It's what I call it. It's Starfire1408, and I post whenever I'm going to speak somewhere. I post things for DLD Day, which is always in October. And I don't post on there every day or post on my stories multiple times throughout the day, just because I try to live life here and now. It's hard when you want to spread the word and kind of get a bit of a following, but you also don't want to be hooked to your phone and plugged in all the time, because then you miss everything that's going on out here.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I usually have to navigate those myself, because I do have a following and I do post every day. Yeah, it was a pleasure just getting to know you, getting to know
you.
Yeah, what it was like, what it is like, and what you're doing. I would love to stay in contact and collaborate in anything that we do in the future.
Absolutely. Please, now you know my Instagram. You have my contact information. I'm always here to talk about bullying, to talk about DLD. Those are my two biggest things. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
And that's it. That's a wrap, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today and for giving me the privilege to speak over your life and for you receiving the gift of growth. Remember, every step you take forward, no matter how small or big, you are truly moving forward to who you're truly meant to be. Embrace the journey, because the process of becoming is just as powerful as the destination. And in today's episode, if something sparked in you, a question, anything, a goal, an idea, hold on to that. Let it be the nudge you need to take brave steps forward toward the life that's calling. You don't have to have it all figured out to start. You just need to take that next step. And I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. Until next time, keep going. Hey, and do me a favor, share this episode with one friend or on social media. Let's bring more awareness to taking brave steps forward together. That's it. That's a wrap, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today and for giving me the privilege to speak over your life and for you receiving the gift of growth. Remember, every step you take forward, no matter how small or big, you are truly moving forward to who you're truly meant to be. Embrace the journey because the process of becoming is just as powerful as the destination. And in today's episode, if something sparked in you, a question, anything, a goal, an idea, hold on to that. Let it be the nudge you need to take brave steps forward toward the life that's calling you. You don't have to have it all figured out to start. You just need to take that next step. And I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. Until next time, keep going. Hey, and do me a favor, share this episode with one friend or on social media. Let's bring more awareness to taking brave steps forward together.